The moment I declared bankruptcy on live TV, I saw her, the woman I betrayed, and next to her was a little girl with my eyes. If this story grabs your heart, hit that subscribe button and stay with us till the end. And don't forget, drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if someone you once destroyed came back to save you? I stood there under the blinding studio lights, my palms sweating behind the sleek news desk. Cameras were rolling. The country was watching, and I said it, the words no one ever thought they'd hear from me. My name is Brandon Cole, and I'm bankrupt. Just like that, the illusion shattered. I had once been the golden boy of media, networks, magazines, digital empires, all under my name. They used to call me America's last media king. I was 37 with more money than I could count, jets at my command, penthouses in 3 cities, and invitations to every exclusive event in the country. But none of that mattered in that moment. Because the truth was, I'd lost everything, and not just the money. Years before the headlines and the fall, I lost something far more valuable. Her name was Julie. I met Julie in college. She was quiet, brilliant, the kind of person who could sit in silence and still make you feel heard. We were together through the early days, when I was broke, pitching content ideas from our cramped apartment, and she worked nights at a bookstore just to help us make rent. Julie believed in me before anyone else did. But belief doesn't shine on a magazine cover. The deeper I got into the business world, the more I convinced myself that love was a distraction, that I couldn't climb to the top with someone who didn't fit the image. So, 2 months before my company went public, when the IPO buzz was at its peak, I let her go. I didn't even fight for her. I just told her she wouldn't understand the life I was about to live. That it was better for both of us if we went our separate ways. She didn't cry. She just looked at me, heartbroken, and said, "I hope you find what you're looking for, Brandon, but I won't be watching anymore." And she walked out. Years passed. I was everywhere. Forbes, CNN, Times Square billboards. But when I lay in my $10 million Manhattan loft at night, I felt nothing. Just noise. And silence. I started sleeping less. Trusting people less. Drinking more. The empire I built began to crumble the moment I stopped recognizing myself. There were signs. Partnerships falling through, executives resigning, audience numbers plummeting. But I was too stubborn to change course. I thought I could buy my way out of any storm, until I couldn't. The lawsuits hit, then the investors fled, the accounts froze. In a matter of weeks, I went from billionaire to headline, media mogul implodes, coal empire collapses. But none of that compared to what came next. Because in the rubble of my own making, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, a face familiar. And I swear to you, my heart skipped. It was her, Julie. She was in the audience that night, watching me from the very back row of the studio, after all those years, after everything I did to push her away. But there she was, and she wasn't alone. She was holding the hand of a child, a girl, maybe 8 or 9, with eyes just like mine. The moment the camera stopped rolling, I walked off that stage and into silence. No applause, no sympathy, just the cold reality of what my life had become. Within days, the walls truly collapsed. A class action lawsuit hit my desk, allegations of financial manipulation, falsified audience metrics, misrepresented assets. Most of it I could have fought. But what killed me wasn't the lawsuit. It was who filed it. Caleb Turner, my lawyer, my so-called best friend, the man who toasted beside me at every success, who'd been with me since the first million, had switched sides. He was the one who fed information to the prosecution. He was the one who leaked internal memos to the press. And now, he was the one smiling behind microphones, positioning himself as the cleanup man, the savior of public trust. I had trusted him with everything. Every document, every weakness, every late-night confession over whiskey in the boardroom. And he sold me out for a better seat at someone else's table. It wasn't long before my assets were frozen, my home seized, and my name dragged across every headline like a cautionary tale. The private jets were gone. So were the drivers, the assistants, the champagne parties, and so were the people. Friends I'd known for a decade stopped answering calls. Invitations vanished. My inbox turned to dust. People who used to chase me down at events now crossed the street to avoid eye contact. I was toxic, untouchable, a ghost in my own city. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in the outer boroughs. Rent-controlled, no view, smelled like mildew and regrets. The bed creaked when I lay down, and the water ran brown for a full minute every morning. But at least it was quiet. No headlines, no paparazzi. Just me, four walls, and the echo of everything I'd lost. My family? They didn't call. Not even once. My sister left a voicemail telling me not to drag the family name into my mess. My father's lawyer sent a letter officially disowning me from the trust fund he once promised I'd never need. Turns out, when you fall far enough, even blood looks the other way. And yet, in that small apartment, eating instant noodles and watching my own downfall replay on YouTube clips, I finally understood something. I had built an empire without roots. I chased power, but never purpose. Now all I had was time. And one haunting image I couldn't shake, Julie. Standing in that audience with a little girl who looked exactly like me. What if? No, it couldn't be. Could it? It arrived on a Monday. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in careful handwriting on a plain white envelope. I almost threw it out. These days, most of my mail was junk or threats. Creditors, journalists fishing for dirt, old investors demanding apologies they'd never get. But something about this one, I don't know. It felt personal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No note, no greeting, just a set of medical records. My name, my birth date, and one red highlighted line that made my chest tighten. Stage 3 aortic valve stenosis, urgent intervention recommended. I read it again and again. Heart disease? Since when? There were attached scans, lab work, even a hospital referral. It looked official, but my name wasn't on the testing requisition. It was as if someone else had submitted my data behind my back. Was this a setup? A twisted media trap? Maybe someone trying to paint me as weak, desperate, dying? But something deeper in me stirred. My hands had been shaking more lately. I was tired all the time. I'd blamed the stress, the fall, the loneliness. But maybe it was something else. After a long night staring at the ceiling and listening to my heartbeat like a broken drum, I made the appointment. The clinic was small, tucked behind a grocery store in a part of town where no one would think to look for someone like me. Perfect for staying invisible. I checked in under a fake name, just like the old days, except back then I used aliases to skip the paparazzi. Now it was shame I was hiding from. They called me in. I walked into a dimly lit room. A single monitor glowed faintly in the corner. And there she was, the doctor. She wore a white coat, surgical mask, and gloves. Her hair tied back, nothing familiar at first glance. But when she turned toward me and looked into my eyes, I froze. Those eyes. Somewhere in me, I knew them. She didn't say her name, didn't introduce herself, just gestured toward the table and asked me to sit. Her voice was calm, controlled. But her hands trembled ever so slightly when she placed the stethoscope on my chest. She reviewed the charts silently. Her gloved finger traced my name on the paper. And then she looked at me, really looked, and asked, "Do you ever experience shortness of breath, tightness in your chest?" I nodded, slowly. My words caught in my throat. There was a long pause. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "If you don't get treatment soon, it could be fatal." I tried to ask her who she was, why she seemed familiar, why I felt this invisible thread pulling at my memory. But before I could finish, she stood up, gathered the documents, and said, "We'll schedule the surgery. You'll be contacted." Then she walked out. And I sat there, completely still, heart racing, mind spinning. Who was she? And why did I feel like she wasn't a stranger at all? I couldn't stop thinking about her. For days after that appointment, I kept hearing her voice, steady, calm, but with something buried underneath. Pain? Anger? Maybe something I couldn't name. And those eyes, they haunted me. At my second visit, I tried to break the ice. I made a dry joke about how I used to speak in boardrooms, but now couldn't even get a full sentence out in a clinic. She didn't laugh, just told me to lie back, pressed the stethoscope to my chest, and listened in silence. Every session after that was the same. Cold, clinical, professional. But it was in the way she lingered after every word. The way she paused just slightly before answering anything personal. The way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't looking. There was history in her eyes. I felt it. I just didn't know whose. One day, while I waited in the hallway, I struck up a quiet conversation with a young nurse on duty. She was chatty, bright-eyed, probably fresh out of school. When I asked about the doctor, the one who'd been treating me, she hesitated at first. Then she said, "Oh, Dr. Myers?" She's a mystery. No one here knows much. Real name? No clue. Everyone just calls her J. Some say she changed it when she transferred here last year. Dr. J. Myers, J. The letter hit me like a punch to the chest. Could it? No, I was spiraling. I had to be. But from that day forward, I paid closer attention. Not to the charts, not to the meds, but to her. Her voice, soft but deliberate, her movements, elegant, familiar, and then it hit me. Not all at once, but in flashes. Years ago, back in college, Julie had dreams of med school. I remembered her staying up late studying anatomy textbooks while I pitched media startups to our roommates. I remember her telling me, with so much fire in her voice, "I don't just want to save lives. I want to be the person people trust when their world is falling apart." She gave up that dream when we moved to New York. I needed her to support my hustle. She dropped out before she even applied to any program. I told myself I'd make it up to her someday, that my success would be our success. But when I got that first $1 million valuation, I forgot. Or maybe I just didn't care. And now, years later, in a rundown clinic on the edge of town, I was being saved by a woman who might very well be the same one I'd left behind in the dust of my ambition. Julie. Could it really be her? Could the woman I abandoned be the same one trying to save my life? I needed answers. But some truths don't come when you ask for them. They come when you're finally ready to hear them. I couldn't keep pretending. Every visit made it harder to ignore the truth I didn't want to say out loud. The way she moved, the way she avoided small talk, the way her eyes softened whenever she thought I wasn't watching. I knew those eyes. And one Thursday afternoon, after my session ended, I made a choice. I waited. From my car, parked across the street, I watched as she left the clinic. No white coat, just jeans, a hoodie, and a tote bag slung over her shoulder. She walked with purpose, like someone who didn't want to be noticed. But I noticed everything. She took a bus, 2 stops, then got off near the outskirts of town, where buildings gave way to silence. And then I saw where she was going. A cemetery. I followed at a distance. The sky was gray, the air still. She moved through the rows like she'd been there 100 times. No hesitation, no map. She stopped at a grave. I stayed hidden behind a tree. But I could see her shoulders rise and fall as she stood in front of the headstone. She didn't cry, she didn't kneel, she just stood there. I got closer. I had to know. That's when I saw the name etched in stone, Elaine Carter, beloved mother of Julie. It felt like the ground tilted beneath me. Julie. There it was. Proof. No more guessing, no more doubt. I stepped forward. She didn't turn around. I said her name. Softly at first, like I was afraid it might shatter in the air. Julie? She didn't move. Julie? Is it really you? Finally she turned. No mask, no gloves. Just her face, older now, stronger, wiser. But those eyes were still the same. Still her. She looked right at me and said, without blinking, "That name doesn't belong to me anymore." I couldn't speak. I just stared at her, like seeing a ghost I didn't know I'd been grieving. She continued, calm, composed, like she'd been rehearsing this moment for years. "I'm Dr. J. Myers now. The woman you knew died the day you left her behind." I opened my mouth. No words came out. "I didn't come back to hurt you," she added. "I didn't even want you to know. But when I heard you were sick, truly sick, I had a choice to make." Her voice broke just slightly, but she kept her posture firm. "And I chose to help, because that's what I do. Not for you, not to rekindle anything, but because someone once told me I'd never understand your world. And maybe that's true. But I understand mine now." I took a step forward, searching her face for something, anger, regret, anything. But she just turned away. "I have nothing else to say," she whispered, and she walked off, leaving me standing there, alone, next to the grave of a woman who raised her, and the ruins of a man who finally understood what he'd lost. I didn't see her again for days. I kept showing up at the clinic, sitting through treatments in silence, hoping she'd appear. But she didn't. Another doctor took over my case. No explanation, no goodbye. Then one morning, I received a text from an unknown number. No name, just a time, a place. East River Pier, 7 p.m., come alone. I knew it was her. I got there early. The water was calm, the sky painted in fading gold. I waited in silence, heart pounding like it was ready to burst. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Julie. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, face unreadable. I didn't speak. She did. "You want to know everything? Fine." I'll tell you what you never cared to ask. Her voice was sharp, but not cruel. Just heavy, worn down by years of silence. After you left, she said, I collapsed. I don't mean emotionally. I mean literally. I woke up in a hospital bed 2 days later. Miscarriage. I couldn't breathe. She looked away. I hadn't even told you I was pregnant. I was waiting. I thought the IPO would settle and you'd come back to your senses. I thought we'd talk about the future. She paused, the wind brushing through her hair like time itself was trying to comfort her. But you never came back, and the baby didn't make it. She looked me in the eye then. You didn't just walk away from me, Brandon. You walked away from us. I tried to speak, an apology maybe, but she raised a hand. No, let me finish. She took a breath, calmer now. I left New York after that. Changed my name, started from nothing, medical school, internships, night shifts, no shortcuts. Just grit and grief. And I promised myself, no matter what, I would never let someone have that kind of power over me again. Least of all you. There was a long silence between us. But then I saw you on TV, she continued, her voice softening. Brandon Cole, bankrupt, alone, sick. I thought I'd feel satisfaction, vindication, but I didn't. I just felt sad. Because no matter what you did, no matter how much you hurt me, I never got to say goodbye. A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. So I pulled your medical file. I watched your case, and when I saw how serious it was, I stepped in, not for revenge, not for closure. She looked at me one last time. I did it because I owed myself that goodbye. And just like that, she turned to leave. But before she disappeared into the night, she whispered one final thing, barely loud enough for the wind to carry. I'm not here to save your life, Brandon. That part's up to you now. And she was gone. Leaving behind the truth I never knew, and the chance I never deserved. After Julie walked away that night, something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to save my image or my legacy. I just wanted the truth. And there were pieces that never fit. Things that happened back then I had buried too deep too fast. Like the rumors, the anonymous emails, the tabloid whispers, the tip-offs that Julie had been seeing someone behind my back. I believed them. I let that belief push me over the edge. I let it justify walking away from the only real thing I ever had. And I never questioned where those rumors came from. Until now. I started digging, quietly. I still had a few favors left, a few old colleagues who hadn't deleted my number. I called in everything I had left, and a name kept coming up. Kyle Mercer, my assistant, my shadow, my right hand. He knew everything. My schedule, my passwords, my moods, my weaknesses. He'd been with me since year 2, back when the company was still operating out of a rented loft. Kyle was the one who showed me the emails about Julie. He was the one who told me she'd been seen with a mystery guy from her past. He even said he personally overheard her on a call once, talking about a pregnancy she was keeping secret. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was loyal. He stayed late, protected me, fought off reporters, handled damage control. Except he wasn't protecting me. He was positioning himself. With a few discreet queries, I confirmed it. Kyle had met with our biggest competitor just weeks before our IPO. Secret lunches, private calls, shared flights, and right before the first lawsuit hit, Kyle vanished, resigned by email, said he needed time to reflect. I hired a private investigator. Within 48 hours, we had confirmation. Kyle was in the Bahamas, under a new name, funded by accounts traced back to the same rival who orchestrated my company's downfall. I didn't hesitate. I flew out. I found him at a luxury beachside resort, sipping cocktails, living like he'd earned any of this. When I confronted him, he looked shocked for about 2 seconds. Then he smirked. You were never going to survive up there forever, Brandon, he said. You made enemies. I just gave them an opening. I stared at him, fists clenched, heart pounding. You lied to me about Julie, I said. He shrugged. You wanted to believe she was cheating. I just gave you a reason. No apology, no regret, just arrogance. I wanted to hit him, to scream, but instead I walked away. Because in that moment I realized something. He didn't take me down. I did. I handed him the keys to my kingdom. I let my ego, my ambition, and my blind trust destroy everything. Kyle was just the match. I was the gasoline. He fled the country that night, somehow sensing the walls closing in. Last I heard, he was in Dubai, or maybe Bali. Doesn't matter. Because I wasn't chasing him anymore. I was chasing something far more important: redemption. Redemption doesn't come in one big gesture. It comes in small, deliberate steps. The kind that make your stomach turn. The kind that force you to face the man you used to be, before the money, the power, the headlines. After I returned from confronting Kyle, I didn't go back to hiding. I didn't run. I sat in my apartment, opened a blank page, and wrote 3 words at the top: in the event of. It was time to write my will. The doctors had been clear. My heart condition was progressing. Even with surgery, there were no guarantees. I had no heirs, no family who wanted anything to do with me, no legacy worth saving. But Julie had founded a nonprofit medical organization 3 years ago, Hope Bridge, specializing in low-cost treatment for underserved communities. I learned about it from one of her colleagues. Quietly funded, humble, changing lives. So I made a decision. Everything I had left, stocks, residuals, royalties, even the apartment, I put it in the will earmarked for Hope Bridge. It wasn't just money. It was an apology, a down payment on something I could never fully repay. Then I did the hardest thing of all. I spoke publicly. I called a press conference, just a live stream from my tiny apartment, no flashy lights, no lawyers, just me, a webcam, and the truth. My name is Brandon Cole, I began, and I have spent the better part of my life chasing the wrong kind of success. I told the world what I'd done, how I abandoned the only woman who ever truly loved me, how I believed lies instead of asking questions, how I lost everything worth keeping because I was too proud to admit I'd been wrong. I ended it simply: Julie Carter, if you're watching, I'm sorry. Not for what the world saw, but for what you had to endure in silence. If I could give you back those years, I would. But since I can't, I'm giving you everything else. Within hours, social media exploded. Some people called it a stunt, some called it brave. Others didn't care either way, but I didn't do it for them. I did it for her. And a few days later, I got a knock on my door. Julie. No mask, no doctor's coat, just Julie. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like she was still searching for proof that I was real. I don't want your money, she said. I nodded. I know. I didn't do what I did for recognition. I know that too. She paused, folding her arms. Her voice was steady but quieter than I remembered. But I saw the video, she said. And I read the will. And I saw the name of the nonprofit spelled right. Most people get it wrong. I half smiled. She looked at me, really looked, for the first time in years. I'm not saying I forgive you. Not yet, she said. But maybe I can believe you've changed. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of my broken-down apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. It was supposed to be a simple speech, a short talk at a community health event. Just a few words to thank the volunteers, highlight Julie's nonprofit, and remind people that even the most broken things can be rebuilt. I had rehearsed it a dozen times in my head. I stood in front of the crowd, under a string of warm lights in a converted gymnasium packed with families, nurses, and kids with face paint and snow cones. It wasn't some billion-dollar press conference, just people, real people. And Julie, she stood at the edge of the crowd, arms folded, watching quietly. Not as a lover, not even as a friend, just as someone who wasn't walking away this time. I took the microphone. My name is Brandon Cole, I began. Some of you know that name from headlines. Some of you don't. That's okay. What matters isn't who I was, but who I'm trying to become. They listened. I spent years chasing things that looked like success. But the truth is, success without soul is just failure with good lighting. A few people laughed softly. I smiled. I glanced at Julie. And then it hit me. A sharp pulse in my chest. Sudden, deep, like something had torn inside me. I lost my words mid-sentence. My mouth moved, but nothing came out. My knees buckled. There were gasps, movement, faces rushing forward, but the lights above began to blur and spin, like the whole world was tilting sideways. Then darkness, faint voices, and one voice I would never forget. Brandon, stay with me. Look at me. You're okay. I've got you. Julie. I remember flashes after that. Her hands on my face, her voice firm, commanding, calling out medical instructions. Someone saying, "Isn't that the Doctor Who?" Another shouting, "It's on camera. It's going viral." But all I saw was her. She brought me back. Not in a hospital. Not in a clinic. Right there, in the middle of a gym. In front of the very people whose lives she dedicated herself to saving. They caught it all. The fall, the rescue, the reunion. Within hours, the footage was everywhere. TV, TikTok, news sites. Commentators called it poetic. Reporters called it redemptive. People online gave us a name we never asked for, the rebirth couple. They didn't know our whole story, the betrayal, the pain, the years of silence. But maybe they didn't have to, because in that moment, on that gym floor, I wasn't a fallen CEO, and Julie wasn't the woman I failed. We were just two people finding each other again, in the unlikeliest way imaginable. 1 year later, I stood on a different kind of stage. No velvet curtains, no corporate banners, just a wooden platform at a local high school auditorium, a microphone with a slight buzz, and rows of folding chairs filled with students, parents, and people who'd once believed life had left them behind. I wasn't a billionaire anymore. The private jets, the high-rise penthouses, the deals over champagne, they were all gone. But I was alive, and more importantly, I was awake. My heart surgery was successful. The recovery was long, painful, humbling. But through every appointment, every setback, every quiet moment where I wondered if I deserved a second chance, Julie was there. Not every day, not as a partner, but as something maybe even more powerful, a witness, a quiet constant. Proof that healing wasn't just medical, it was personal. Today, I'm a different kind of speaker. I don't talk about growth metrics or media takeovers. I talk about loss and grace, and the painful, beautiful truth that sometimes the thing you're most afraid to face is exactly where your freedom lives. Julie, she expanded her clinic into a full community health network, now operating in 6 cities under a single name, Elaine Hope Health. Elaine for her mother. Hope for everyone else. I visit often. Not as a founder, not even as a donor, just as someone who walks through the halls and watches lives being changed by hands that never gave up. Sometimes, Julie and I will sit at the back of the staff room after hours. No cameras, no microphones. Just tea and the quiet understanding between two people who once lost everything and found something better in the ashes. I asked her once, "Why did you help me after all that?" She looked at me and said, "Because I realized forgiveness isn't something you give for them. It's something you give to set yourself free." She smiled, just a little. And because I knew, you still had something to offer, even if you didn't know it yet. She was right. I lost everything. But because of the woman I once let go, I found something more valuable than any fortune I ever built: gratitude. And forgiveness? That's its own kind of wealth.